Well, Kartik, thanks for being with us at the end of a very busy day in this railway museum in the province of Utrecht at the Antwoord Customer Day. You did earlier in the day a presentation about the Nutanix vision, and there was one particular point which I'd like to go in a bit more. At a particular point you said people have to get used to the way of thinking that the individual fan or the individual CPU, it's not interesting anymore. It's a complete different school of thinking. Now I can see that if you come from Facebook or Google or whatever, you've been brought up with this mentality. How do you feel people in traditional big corporations respond to this way of thinking about using commodity items for mission critical applications in healthcare, financial markets, what have you not?
So that's a first off, very excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And so that's a good question. I think it's usually a mixed reaction. So some of the people are convinced based on the fact that people like Facebook and Google are able to pull this off. So there must be some real sense to whatever is being preached. So it is possible to pull it off. But the majority of the skepticism is usually from the fact that this is very academic, and is it actually possible for a distributed system and all software to be intelligent enough to re-replicate data and coordinate the entire thing, that it gives sort of a feeling of unease that there's too much of control being given up. But in some sense, that's the way of progression, right? That's slowly it'll start maturing and then it'll become mainstream. And the second part is a lot of these people have come from backgrounds where the data rate is growing, but is not yet unbearably large. So as it starts getting even larger and larger, then the traditional ways completely break down and you start looking for newer ways, and then the other sort of thinking starts becoming more appealing.
And then this seems more attractive.
Absolutely.
But we're, from what I get, we are at some kind of inflection point.
Yes.
Where people start seeing if Google is doing it, must work, but we have to get used to it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
One other thing that is, it seems that some other vendors in this space also seem to hook on this idea, and they're selling you like a 19-inch rack with compute and maybe with a storage network and maybe with a router in there, as if it is an appliance. The way I understood it from your talk is that is something really different from what Nutanix is doing.
That's right.
It seems like the same, the label, you have a rack, it's an appliance, but your appliance is, what is the fundamental difference between these two approaches?
Sure. So there's a couple of fundamental approaches. I'll start with the simpler one, although not the less important one, which is one of form factor. So not all data centers need to start out in units of a rack and expand in units of a rack. So the footprint may be much smaller, and as you grow, you may kind of feel that the use case is morphing and changing to a different requirement in terms of storage, in terms of memory, in terms of compute. So it's much easier to do that in a as you grow fashion rather than in a pre-provisioned rack. Like, it is possible to add usually in these sort of appliances some amount of storage, but it's going to be difficult to change, for example, the exact ratio in which you grow. Firstly. Secondly, it's going to be, secondly, and the more important reason I feel is that this will no longer be, it'll have parts of commodity, but the very fact that this has been custom built to function to some set of specs usually means that it's not all software and it's not commodity. Like,
there's still some stuff which you need to be an expert to tune it.
Exactly. And the failover, for example, is usually still hardware controller based, or like, if it is exactly all commodity, then yes, but usually that's not the case.
So it's a repackaging really of an old concept in a modern marketing concept.
That's right, yes.
Okay. And one last question is, it would seem to make sense that you have the compute, you have the storage. Today we heard a lot about virtualization of everything, the storage, the software-defined network. And should there be like a switch type of Palo Alto Networks type of thing in the whole equation? What's your take on that? Where does the Nutanix appliance fit in with the virtualized network part of the?
So that's pardon me if I'm wrong about the details of Palo Alto, but from what I understand, they provide an application-like service on top of the network and control what is the flow in the stream of the network.
Right.
But if you take Nutanix, for instance, it could also have a network angle in the sense of, I'm doing a write, which is a storage write, and I am a user waiting for this write. So that write has to be given maybe a higher priority over, say, a disk failed somewhere and we're re-replicating the data. Now, both of them will flow through the network and they're both competing for the same resource, but one clearly has a higher priority over the other. So there is still an angle for Nutanix, I believe, in the networking side, and that's a little different from what Palo Alto offers, which is not in this.
But they can coexist.
They can coexist.
You can still hook up the Palo Alto switch.
Absolutely.
With all those appliances.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
Well, thanks very much for making things a bit clearer for us. Wish you have a great day. I guess we'll go and have a drink, finish the day, because otherwise we'll be the last one standing here.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.